Welcome to the Atheist Debates Project's interview with Dr. Richard Carrier and his thoughts on debating. Dr. Richard Carrier is a professional historian, published philosopher, and prominent defender of the American free thought movement. He has a PhD in ancient history from Columbia University and specializes in the intellectual history of Greece and Rome, particularly ancient philosophy, religion, and science, with emphasis in the origins of Christianity. In addition to his published works, which include an exhaustive look at the historicity of Jesus, Dr. Carrier contributes to several online sites as a frequent speaker at secular conventions and participates in formal public debates on a variety of topics. Please tell us a little about your history with debates.
Well, yes, I've been debating since 2005 at least. I've done more than I can count now. I can't even remember all the debates that I've done. But my first one was Mike Licona with the Veritas Forum at UCLA in 2005. That still, I think, is my favorite debate. I think overall it was my favorite debate because it had some amusing things happen during it that I quite liked. But I've debated William Lane Craig, I've debated David Marshall, and Horner and various other personages throughout time. But I've also debated atheists. I debated Zeba Crook on the historicity of Jesus. And so he's an atheist professor of biblical studies. So that was actually an interesting experience. I debated Mike McKay on atheist metaethics. So we had different explanations of what morality meant to atheists. And those were actually much more interesting debates because both parties were actually interested in the truth. And so neither of us were interested in gaming the other. It wasn't a tactical thing. So it was actually a much more productive debate. So I kind of like those kinds of debates. I'd like to have more of those. Obviously I've done existence of God, resurrection of Jesus, and historicity of Jesus, and various other topics throughout time.
Do you prefer formal or informal one-on-one debates?
Well, me personally, and this is just me, so I don't necessarily universalize this to everyone. I find that impractical to have a personal one-on-one debate. So what I do is I find that what is it that you want to debate, and then I want them to go do some readings on it first, and then we'll communicate electronically so that we can have as much delay in between as we want and all of that, rather than just having this one-on-one where you've got 10 minutes or whatever to try and convince them of something. I usually don't like that because I like referencing documents. I like making sure that they understand some of the background information they need and so on. To me, it's an educational process, and so if they're not willing to treat it as an educational process, you have to educate yourself a little, then they're not really taking the debate seriously anyway, and so there really isn't a point in trying to argue with them. But that's just the way it's worked for me, and that's what's comfortable for me to do, and that's just, I think, it's part of me as an educator coming out.
Do you strive to have an audience whenever possible?
Yes. In fact, what I argue is that oftentimes when you're having a debate with someone, you're not going to convince them. It's usually they're not even the relevant party in the debate. The relevant party are all the people watching the debate, because they're going to see, not only are they going to get the information, not only are they going to see you have the better arguments and so on, but they're also going to see how ridiculous the other person is and how they behave. And so see the difference between the behavior between the two in terms of which one of you actually cares about truth, which one cares about being fair, and all of that. All of that influences people. But if you do it in front of an audience, a lot of the audience are fence sitters, right? So might be the first time they've heard this debated. Even if have picked a side, that might be the first time they've heard it debated. So I think it's much more useful. You're making a better use of your time if you're allowing a lot of people to see what's this transaction, to see it happen. Whereas if you're just doing one-on-one constantly, that's a very inefficient use of your time, I think.
When debating, is it your goal to educate or to try to change minds?
Yeah, well, I always use it as an educational tool. I only now, and it's been 10 years since I started, only now am I starting to see people come up and say, that debate changed my mind over the long term. It wasn't immediately. So it's only recently that I've realized that debates do change minds, or at least they contribute a crucial part of that process. For a while, I just assumed, well, maybe it doesn't change minds, but what I can do is lay the seeds of doubt and educate the audience, use the debate as an educating opportunity. The other side of it is that when I approach a debate, I don't approach with the goal to win, win at all costs, right? So to me, it's more important to educate the audience. So to me, it's more important to be honest. And so when I run into cases where, someone's using the spreading tactic where they're making so many claims that I can't rebut them all before the clock runs out, that's a dirty tactic. But I realize in that situation I can't formally win the debate because I can't even get all the rebuttals in time. So I just use the time that I have to educate the audience in the best way possible, so that it gets them thinking, realizing things they might not have heard before, thinking in ways they might not have thought before. And I have always hoped, and now I'm seeing confirmation of, that it would lay these seeds of doubt that would stick in their craw. They would go investigate it and check it out, and then find out that I was right and they were wrong. And then that will gradually contribute to maybe various other streams of information that lead them to changing their mind.
Yeah. Is there a theistic argument that's so annoying you'd prefer to never address it again?
I don't categorize things that way. So how would I answer that? Like almost all of them are annoying. Presuppositionalism I don't even engage with. That's one that's just ridiculous. The argument from reason, although annoying is the wrong word. I think it's naive, but it's interesting in the sense that answering the argument from reason, which is the idea that we wouldn't be able to reason, or reason wouldn't exist if God didn't create it. Answering that actually leads to a lot of interesting naturalist philosophy. Like you have to explain, like, well, what is the ontology of logic? Like, what does that mean? And when you say things like things are logically true or false, what does that mean on naturalism? What are propositions, and how are they structured in the brain? And it's like, these are a lot of interesting questions about how the brain reasons and things like that.
So, what value was there in responding to the argument from reason?
I find the continuing use of the argument annoying, but when it was first proposed and articulated, I found responding to it very valuable. So I actually found it a very useful argument in that sense. But once you've responded to it and presented all of the information that shows that it doesn't really have a logical foundation, it should just die. And so that's you can say that about a lot of things. Like the Kalam cosmological argument is just so annoying because it's wrong like 50 ways. Like there's so many things wrong with it. There's not even enough time in a day to explain all the things wrong with it. So I find that one really annoying as well. But the things that I find most annoying are not so much which argument they use, but how they argue. William Lane Craig, for example, will keep repeating false claims even after physicists and cosmologists themselves have told him to his face that they're false, and he'll just keep using them, and then people will keep repeating them. And that is the one thing about argument that I find the most frustrating of all, is this unwillingness to acknowledge the truth, and this sort of irresponsibility as an educator. Like if I was promoting something and someone says, that's factually false and here's the thing, and I was like, you're totally right, I would feel morally obligated as an educator to re-educate the public and always give the public the correct information, not keep repeating the false information over and over again. So that's very maddening and angering when I see that. It's usually in the Christian community when they keep doing that, like keep repeating false claims, even when they know that they're false claims.
If there is a God who wants us to discover him, why do we have to become experts in so many topics?
Well, that question answers itself. There is no God. Yes, of course. This is an argument I actually use. I just did a talk in Carbondale, Illinois, where I did one talk at a Unitarian church on naturalist philosophy, like our positive beliefs, what we actually believe in. But the night before I did why there is no God, I did the negative side of atheism. And my whole shtick when I did that was I was pointing out, like, if you approach it like a Bayesian reasoner, you can take every argument for God and use it to prove that God doesn't exist. And one of them is this thing, like if there was an actual God and he actually did give a damn about what you believed or thought it was important at all for you to get things right, or had any moral sense at all, like you'd want people to be moral if they could, what you would see in the history of religions, and we know religion started at least 40,000 years ago, you would see the consistent gospel preached from 40,000 years ago to now in every culture, everywhere around the earth, in their language even. Or if there was a God, there might only be one language. There'd be the language God taught us, right? We'd just be speaking that language. But even if that's not the case, even if we have different languages, God would communicate in those languages locally for everybody. And we would, when cultures eventually meet, in historical time, they would compare notes and go, oh, you know what? Our God was telling us exactly the same stuff, line by line by line. So that's what we would expect to see if there was actually a God. So the fact that we don't see that that it's very improbable. And unless there is no God, then it's exactly what we expect, that it's humans making stuff up. So the evidence very clearly in that category shows that there's no God. And if there was one, the world would be different than it is.
Is it a good idea to defend hard atheism, the positive assertion that gods don't exist?
It depends. I think really that depends on your knowledge and skill when you're approaching the debate. Obviously, if you're having a debate and they're on the positive, they're doing the positive affirmation, it's easier as a debater to just negate it, right? To just take the position that they haven't proved their case, rather than proving the opposite. I personally love proving the opposite, like showing that the evidence actually shows that there is no God, that we can actually show that it's very improbable that there is a God. I like doing that, but I've prepared myself through years of study and of understanding the logic of how to make that argument, understanding the facts you need to make that argument. So I'm prepared to make that argument, but I don't expect everybody to be like that squared away in terms of what you need to do it. It is easier to just show that they're using fallacious arguments and therefore their conclusion is not proved. So that to me is more a question of where the debater feels comfortable doing it. And if you want to do it the easy way, that is an effective way, because that at the same time you're still showing the audience that, you know what, those arguments are kind of weak. They don't really hold up to the conclusion that they're making. So that's still a valuable thing to do. But I do think we can go beyond that.
What should our target topics be, and are there topics we should avoid?
I don't really have an opinion about avoiding. I don't really think that's necessary, and I don't think Dawkins needs to take the position that he should not do debates or that it's going to lend credence to them, because if you're good at it, you just make them look ridiculous. That's bad PR. Like the idea that no PR is bad PR. Well, for religion, bad PR is bad PR. So making them look ridiculous is actually hurting their cause. And so if you can use like a high profile person like Ken Ham and make him look ridiculous on national television. Awesome, do that. So to me, the concern is not avoiding certain debates or certain people avoiding certain people. To me, it's if you're going to do a debate, make sure you know how to do a debate. Because that's one thing where, like, if Dawkins were to do a debate, I think Dawkins probably has some background in doing debate through the education system, the college that he went through. They actually teach you some of those skills. But a lot of people aren't taught the skills of debate, and so they do really poorly. And so even though they're right, they make their position look bad. And so that is a propaganda win for the other side. So I think it's really important to like understand the principles of debate, understand what tactics they're going to use against you, be really prepared, and be prepared to communicate ideas quickly and clearly and simply. So to me, my concern is mostly just whatever you're going to debate, whoever's going to debate whoever, just make sure our side is represented by someone who knows how to do it competently and well. And we as a community can help them do that. There's lots of resources, and a lot of us can coach or give advice and stuff like that. So I think it's a resource that can be tapped. And I think Nye did that a little bit. He actually got some feedback and advanced information from our community about how to approach it, and that's great. And that's the kind of thing you need to do. And yeah, that's what I would recommend is going forward on that.
Is there a debate opponent, style, or topic you haven't tried but would like to try?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think like oral debates where you're up against a clock. That's different than if we had like a written debate where we could just go on and on as long as we wanted. If we had a structured set of rules and just continue the debate, because like if you do a written debate, you can like check their facts. Like you can stop, go to the library, let's look up this research article that you're citing and analyze it. So those are two different things. If we were to do like an online debate like that, where you can actually do serious study, each of you can actually vet your own arguments and check things and so on. I'd like to do libertarianism versus progressivism with an atheist opponent, so that religion is just push it out. That's not even in contention, and we're just talking about, well, okay, there's no God, but does libertarianism make a correct model of society? Is that going to work and help us, or should we be progressives? What does progressivism mean? So that I think would be a very important and useful debate. But of course, you'd have to get a libertarian who's going to be honest and fair in the debate, which I think is possible that can exist. Like I said, I've debated atheists who are willing to do that. And just on that one issue, it can be difficult sometimes. So that's the debate I'd like to have. As far as opponents I'd like to have in terms of stand-up debates, but even online, whatever, is Mark Goodacre, for example, because I respect him a lot, and I think he's a really... He's the kind of, on the issue of historicity of Jesus. So he's the one scholar that I believe would treat me fairly and treat the issue fairly, and we would get a very productive, interesting debate out of it. In the same way that we get those from when I do other atheist to atheist debates. I don't think he's an atheist, but the point being is that he's not a Christian apologist and actually is interested in the truth and actually knows his stuff. So yeah, that would be like a dream debate for me, be Mark Goodacre and me on the historicity of Jesus. And there's some rumors that might happen someday, but yeah, that's the one I would do on a stand-up debate.
So what would you recommend people do to improve their ability to argue?
Yeah, it does translate for sure. Although there are a lot of aspects to debate. I mean, debate is a skill, right? It's so you could be like the greatest biologist ever, but you might be shit at debate because it's a completely different skill than being a really great biologist. There are aspects maybe of debate that you've practiced as a biologist because you have to argue for things, but it's not the same thing. When you have like a timed debate, you have sequence of rebuttals, you have equal time. Those kinds of things require you to get a lot of information out within time, to do it not like so quickly that people can't follow you, not with with like advanced assumptions so the audience doesn't even know what you're talking about. So you really have to talk to a general audience, and you have to figure this out, and you have to do all of this on the fly, like literally on the fly. You have to figure out, wow, this guy's just made like 4 arguments, and I've got to figure out how to respond to those arguments in time, in a way that the audience will understand, and so on. That's really challenging, and that requires experience. I think if you want to prepare for that kind of thing, just watch a lot of debates, especially good ones and bad ones. Like see, like if something is just a disaster, what went wrong, and like so you can get an idea of going in what sorts of things to do right and wrong, and then just start doing it a lot. That's the other thing is if you engage in it a lot, and possibly there where like you're doing one-on-one personal debates, can be a training field for that kind of thing to like give you some idea of how to do it. But it's never going to be the same as a timed formal debate where specific tactics can be deployed on you, and you have to be able to handle that, and you're on the clock, and that's the most challenging part of debate that requires a skill to be developed to master.
Given that you like written debates, what are your thoughts on the dueling videos debating style on YouTube?
I hadn't thought of my doing it. I think obviously that should happen. Something like that should be structured and done. That would be awesome. It would be one tool in many things. I would prefer normally to do written debates. So if I'm going to do like an online exchange thing rather than do like a video show thing, I was like, let's just do like word limit. You make your case, and then we can check it, and then I'll make my response, and you can check it, and move on from there. And with some sort of rules of fairness and so on when you do it. That's the kind of debate I would like to have, but that's just me as a scholar so that I can actually do the debate properly rather than it's just where it's less about performance, it's more about the arguments. Whereas though I see a great value in performance because a lot of really good vloggers can make a really good point in that context that's much more effective for the audience maybe. And it can be entertaining at the same time, and that can actually add value to the message being done. And it can get a lot of people want to watch these videos, so you can actually get more eyes on, whereas if you have a written debate, less people might be interested in that. So for lots of reasons, I think vlogging debate is a valuable asset. I'm not sure that I'm the best person for that, but I'd love to see people doing it.
This video is made possible by supporters of the Atheist Debates Patreon project. You can find more information and add your support at patreon.com/atheistdebates.